Welcome to the latest episode of the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. My name is Hunter Baumgardt, your host. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HunterBOnAir. Feel free to like the Facebook page as well, Hunter Baumgardt Sports, and you could watch or listen to the podcast. You could watch on YouTube or listen on SoundCloud. Simply search Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. Well, happy Thanksgiving week. Hope you probably have some days off this week, which will be nice even if you're working from home. And I hope you're enjoying the week so far. And usually we have guests, right, on this podcast. Usually we have a lot of guests. This week it's just going to be me. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of where we are in the Wisconsin sports landscape, but also why this past week was a great representation of what it's like to be a Wisconsin sports fan, because there was examples from the Bucks to the Badgers to the Packers all this week of what it is like being a Wisconsin sports fan for basically the last decade and a half, however long you want to go back. So I want to talk about all that. We're going to get to the Bucks, what happened with Bogdan Bogdanovic deal, what happened with the Badgers this weekend with their loss to Northwestern, and we're going to get to the Packers in just a second. But many, sports cities or sports states, whether it be, any kind of state, whether it's Florida, whether it's New York, or whether it's, in a state or city that has multiple sports teams, there's a lot that would love to be Wisconsin, right? You'd love to have 3 MVPs. You'd love to have Rodgers. You'd love to have Giannis. You'd love to have Yelich. You'd be like, oh my gosh, if you're in some of these other states other than maybe LA, right? LA is kind of right. So when you think about it, it's like, wow, Wisconsin has some superstars. They have some good teams. They have some good coaches, right? They've got it, right? That's exactly where you want to be. Now, these teams are nearly always in the mix, right? The Packers are nearly always in the mix. The Badgers are nearly always in the mix the past decade. And the Bucks and the Brewers have made some runs as well, including an Eastern Conference Finals appearance for the Bucks. And of course, the Milwaukee Brewers make it to the NLCS. But when the ultimate goal is to win a championship, the continuous theme of getting so close but not quite being good enough is getting old. And I think this week represented that so well. The Bucks got close to getting Bogdan, right? To solidifying that starting lineup and have one of the best starting fives in the league. The Badgers played the top team in the Big Ten West, went down, lost by 10. Close, but lost by 10. And the Packers, trying to get a statement win on the road, haven't beaten many teams with winning records this year. So close, but not quite. So we'll start with the Packers. We'll go to the Bucks. We'll go to the Badgers. And we'll get more into, kind of what this Packers team specifically, and then kind of go general once we get past the specifics. But I just want to keep that in the back of your mind throughout this, because it really has been, the last week or so, has been what it's like to be a Wisconsin sports fan. So let's start with the Packers. They lose 34-31 to the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday afternoon with an overtime loss. You know it. You saw it. At least they made it fun at the end. I mean, I was just glad Aaron Rodgers could have a chance at the end, but you have a 2-touchdown lead at halftime. And the Packers offense has played so well in domed stadiums so far this year. If you think about it, right? They've scored 35 against Houston. They scored 37 against New Orleans, and now they score 31 against Indy, and 28 of those came in the first half. You're thinking, holy cow, if they match what they did in the first half, they'll score 56 points this afternoon. Now, of course, it's not that easy, but you're like, wow, their offense is cooking. They should at least score another touchdown in the whole second half. No. And with 9:34 left in the fourth quarter, the Colts had run 35 plays, and the Packers had run 6 plays. 6. Packers offense becomes stagnant. The Packers defense starts getting run over. And they're kind of run over a little bit in the first half, but it really showed in the second half when that team continued to give up run after run and pass after pass. And it just continued. So that sentence that I just said, the Packers offense went stagnant and the Packers defense getting run over, it's like the same. I talked to my buddy Grant Bills, who works at WKTY here in La Crosse and also has his show on The Zone in Madison. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Listen to it 4 to 6 on WKTY in La Crosse and The Zone in Madison. But I'm so tired of the exact same thing. Whether it's McCarthy to LaFleur, doesn't matter. Whether it's Eddie Lacy or Aaron Jones, doesn't matter. Whether it's Clay Matthews or Zadarius Smith, it doesn't matter. Everything is the same. Not everything. I shouldn't say that. That is a way too broad of a statement. things continue to be the same of how this team wins and loses. Defense can't hold a lead. The offense is up and down. Hot and cold on both sides of the football. Some special teams gaffes as well. And the play calling sometimes is questionable. Now, in my opinion, I think LaFleur has done way better in the play calling than Mike McCarthy did in his latter years. But the two main points there, the defense continues to struggle and the offense continues to be so hot and cold. Why can other teams be so consistent and lead their teams to a championship, like the 49ers last year, right? Lead their teams to an NFC championship. I know they lost in the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs as well. Sure, they have some more talent maybe overall, and maybe that's specifically what needs to happen. But man, the consistency just isn't there. Last year, the Packers offense, okay, scored over 30 only 4 times in the entire regular season. 4 times. And they made it to an NFC championship game. They scored over 30 only 4 times, 30 or more, okay? And then the Packers this year have scored 37 times in just 10 games. So the offense this year is clearly better. But this team already has the same amount of losses this year as they did in the entire campaign last year in the regular season. So how can that be through just 10 games? The Packers have scored 30 or more 7 times when they did it through the entire season 4 times last year. The offense is clearly better, and the defense is again the problem. Like it was in 2014, like it was in 2016. Heck, every year since 2011 when they had that Super Bowl run, right? Except maybe last year. Because last year, their defense might have been better than their offense, which, to be honest, that has not been the case with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, right? So we've seen this year, though, and this might end up costing the Packers, and it has cost them some games so far. The defense has absolutely regressed. Through 10 games this year, they are allowing almost 26 points per game. Through 10 games last year, they averaged giving up about 20.5 points per game. That's about a 5-point difference. And when you think about in games, right, you think about football final scores, 26 compared to 20, that's almost, right, 20.5, I guess. 5.5 points. You're getting near touchdown territory there of how much you're giving up, a full touchdown more than you were a year ago. 2019, last year, 25 turnovers through the season. They have 9 through 10 games this year. So that's on pace for about 15. That's 10 less turnovers than last year. And a huge part of it is the 2 guys you paid big money to come here. And the 2 guys that contributed arguably the most in the defense last year, in Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. So let's look at these guys specifically. Zadarius Smith, this is according to Pro Football Reference. Zadarius Smith, 37 QB hits last year, okay? 37. He's on pace for about 27 this year. So that's about 10 less. He needs 5.5 sacks to get to where he was at 13.5 last year. He has about 8 right now. That is promising. But look, Preston Smith. We can talk about Zadarius Smith. Preston Smith is where things really have gone downhill. And it's clear, and I know a lot of people are talking about it, but let's specifically look at the stats. Preston Smith has 5 quarterback hits this year and 1.5 sacks, according to Pro Football Reference, okay? So that's where we're getting these stats. So if they're a little different than others you've seen, that's just because they vary probably depending on how stats are taken. So he has 5 QB hits and 1.5 sacks this year. Last year, he had 23 QB hits and 12 sacks. 12 sacks. He has 1.5 through 10 games. So they're on pace. So Preston Smith is on pace for about 9 QB hits compared to 23 last year and 2.5 sacks compared to 12 sacks last year. That is mind-boggling of a difference. What is it? Quick math. 9.5 less sacks this year. You realize how big that is on a defense? It's almost one a game you're missing. And there's been years, and in the latter part of the McCarthy era specifically, that you could blame the offense on Aaron Rodgers. You could blame the offense on Aaron Rodgers. You could blame not being able to get the ball out quickly, not hitting an open receiver, being too greedy and going to, right? You could blame him for all that. And sure, there's a couple plays here and there that he does that this year. But I'm sorry, but you just can't blame Aaron Rodgers this year. And it really comes back to the defense. It absolutely does. And so my question becomes, why is this so prevalent? We got rid of Dom Capers, and it was kind of the same thing, right? Got rid of Dom Capers for a reason, brought in Mike Pettin, and he's shown some promise, but man, that promise has just absolutely left. I mean, it's just went out the door. I mean, it snuck out the back door and left. So here's the thing. We've talked about on this podcast a few times, but on any radio shows I've done, whether it's for WKTY or what have you, I've talked about the energy and the juice being a problem with this team, right? After all these losses, like the 49ers games, last year, Tampa Bay game this year, it always comes back to, okay, we didn't have enough juice, we didn't have enough energy, right? They even talked about against the Jaguars. And Matt LaFleur really took it upon himself and then kind of called out his team and his coaching staff and said, look, we need to be better at this, right? We need to bring more juice no matter what, no matter the circumstance. Now, the Colts had fans in their stadium, and there's a good contingent of Packers fans on Sunday. So that was, I think, contributed well. That, I think, contributed very much so to the energy you saw, because there was definitely an uptick in the energy. And now I don't think it's just the fans. I think the team could really, Rodgers said they practiced like a great team this week. And I truly believe that. I think they did that, and that brought them some energy and maybe some confidence into the team. Into the game in Indianapolis on Sunday. So they brought that energy. So that was good, but they turned the ball over 4 times. And then we talked about the defense on the field. Then there's a part of sports, in whether it's baseball, basketball, football, it's mentality, right? You go into a game. How are you mentally going into a game? Christian Kirksey had an interception yesterday. Or on Sunday, I should say. Depends on when you're watching this. Kirksey had an interception. And he had this to say about the Green Bay Packers defense. And I have an exception. I've taken exception to it. So take a listen.
Yeah, I mean, we bend, we don't break. And that's how this defense is built. And each and every one of the guys, we look each other in the eyes and we just stay together. And that's how tight this team is. We stay together. So we just, in that aspect, saying, keep fighting.
Let's listen to that very first part again.
Yeah, I mean, we bend, we don't break. And that's how this defense is built.
We bend but don't break. That's how this defense is built.
Yeah, I mean, we bend, we don't break. And that's how this defense is built.
What? They're built to bend but not break. Okay, so that was part of Capers, and now it's part of Pettin and apparently LaFleur. But what kind of mentality, because if the players are saying that they're built to bend but not break, what kind of message does that send to the players? Because I promise you that Kirksey didn't make that up by himself. I promise you that came from a coach. It came from somebody upstairs, maybe even in the media, but I think he wouldn't repeat it if it wasn't something that was consistently said either in the locker room or by his coaches or by his peers. And so that is a mentality then that the Packers have. We are a bend but don't break defense. Is that really a mentality to have in sports? Is that really a mentality to have in life? Think about this, okay? Think about this metaphor. Think about somebody who builds bridges, right? A team builds bridges, okay? And they build a bridge over water, all right? Obviously. Okay, I guess there's bridges over other things, but they build a bridge over water, okay? And they build a bridge too close to the water below, but unless it really rains super, super, super hard, it won't damage the bridge. The bridge won't get damaged unless it is a flood that we see maybe, once every 10 years, right? It's a flood that's an anomaly, okay? But it'll damage it if that happens. But even if it rains just a normal amount, there will be water on the bridge, and there might be some minor flooding in which cars will have to drive through. Okay, so it causes an inconvenience to the drivers who are driving over the bridge because they built it too low. And so the water will be on the bridge. Okay? But at least the bridge won't fall. At least it won't fail. At least the cars won't go plunging into the water below unless there's a monumental flood. But the cars are still going to be in the water, and the tires are still going to be in the water a little bit if they drive through after a significant amount of rain. Because the workers are too lazy to go back and redo the bridge and put it higher after they built the bridge too low. They're too lazy to redo it to make the bridge never have water on it. They're too lazy to go back and say, okay, we should have built it higher. Let's go back and do that. No, it's fine. Well, there'll be more water on it when it rains than there would have if we built it higher. But at least we won't have it flooding, and so that's fine. People can drive through some water. People can, right? They can. By the way, it's always turn around, don't drown. I'm not, we're not going to encourage that. But here's the deal. That's a side note. The cars are going to be able to get through, but they're still going to maybe have some water damage, or the tires are going to get stuck sometimes, or if it's windy, it might add. But at least the bridge won't fall. That's what it's like. That is what the Packers defense is like. At least the bridge won't fall, but boy, is there going to be water on it, and boy, are people going to need to drive through it. You get what I'm saying there? What kind of mentality is that? You wouldn't want to drive over a bridge that could have water on it many times because they built it too low and were lazy to redo it. That's kind of the mentality that the Packers have. They're too lazy almost to say, you know what? We're sick of bending, so we're not going to bend anymore. Instead, we're going to keep bending and just hope that it doesn't break. And believe me, it broke. There's times you're going to break. 3 touchdowns scored by the Colts yesterday. And sure, they let up field goals on 4 different possessions, which is bend but don't break. That's a great example of bend but don't break. But how much did the Colts win by yesterday? 3. What kind of field goal, right? What kind of mentality is that sending to your team when you say we're bend but don't break? When I coached baseball, did I teach my kids to say, I say, hey, Johnny, okay, you can pitch as many balls as you need to, as long as you don't walk in a run when the bases are loaded, right? you can walk to the bases to be loaded, right? You can get a guy on every base. You can load the bases, but make sure to not walk in a guy once those 3 guys are on. You can bend, but don't break. No, I didn't say that. What I said was pitch as many strikes as you can. And there'll be some situations, of course, against any team where maybe you pitch more balls on that day than strikes and you end up walking more people. But I didn't from the outset say, no, you guys can, let's just get this close, right? Go out there, walk 3, 4 people in a row, even if you walk in a guy, it's fine. As long as we don't break, right? As long as we only let up 1 to 2 runs. Well, if you let up 1 to 2 runs every inning, you're all of a sudden you're giving up like 10 runs a game. You see what I'm saying here? Like, what it was with that? They don't tell the Bucs to go out there and try to let up. Okay, just make sure you can let up 100. Just make sure you don't let up 120. Like, that's just so, it's from a competitor standpoint, which comes back to like, okay, the mentality of the coaching staff, like a soft mentality almost, which I don't like to use the words hard and soft because I think soft can be good just depending on what specifically you're talking about. But this whole bend but don't break thing, and the fact that Kirksey said it in his press conference was just wild to me, because in sports you can talk about it in regular life with the construction worker, the building of the bridges metaphor I talked about. You can talk about it with baseball. I mean, there's endless comparisons. Bucks, giving up 100 but not 120. All of those, if you said those things out loud, you'd be like, what? Right? If I walked up to somebody and they asked me what my coaching philosophy is, by the way, I coach, little league baseball. It wasn't anything crazy, but if somebody came up to me and said, Hunter, what's your coaching philosophy? Well, my coaching philosophy is you can walk as many guys as you want, just don't walk anybody in. So you can load the bases with a walk. You could walk and load the bases, and then maybe the next guy will get a bases clearing double, but don't walk in the third guy, right? That's just weird. That's nobody's gonna. If they ask Mike Budenholzer, what's your defensive strategy? Oh, well, we want to give up. We'll give up 100, 110 points, but as long as we don't give up 120. Like, certain teams do that just automatically because maybe their defense isn't good enough or things like that. But I think the Packers have talent there. I think it comes real back to that mentality. And so I don't think it's just simply that they don't have enough talent to not be a bend but don't break. I think it's partly a mentality issue. And I think that really needs to be looked at. And it was very concerning that Kirksey said that. So hopefully that all made sense. I just, I wanted to kind of talk about that specific mentality, because in sports, especially in football, you're a competitor. If you go out there and play, you're a competitor. And I am just surprised that being a competitor you allow that mentality to be in your head. And Kirksey said that's how we're built. It's not, he didn't say that's how we think, but if you're built that way, you're going to think that way. Like, if your defense is built to bend but don't break, you're obviously going to have that in the back of your mind like the entire game. And like I said, they was represented well yesterday, because they got 4 field goals when they could have maybe went down and scored a touchdown. So I guess the scoring could have been much worse. But again, how much do you lose by? You lose by 3. So, and I know the offense was they only had it 2 or 3 times, 4 times in that second half. So it's not like they had a ton of opportunities, but sure, they were definitely stagnant in that second half. But again, it's just the weird part of the bend but don't break. And if you bend but don't break, then the time of possession starts to get way out of hand. Like I said, Colts 35 plays to Packers 6 with 9:34 left in the fourth quarter. So it's a strange mentality. I hope maybe they sometime at some point explain why they have that. Because as Packers fans and as Packers media, we've used that plenty of times, the bend but don't break defense. And I've seen people tweet it. I see radio hosts use it, and that's true. And I just didn't think it actually got to the players and the coaches, and they actually use it and say that's how we're built. That's what I didn't think. So, just my thoughts on the game against the Colts on Sunday. And they've got the Bears coming up this weekend. We'll get to the full Thanksgiving schedule and kind of in that game in a minute or two. So that's, first of all, that's one example this week of how being, a Wisconsin sports fan is, close, but not quite good enough. We'll go through the other 2 quickly. We did a whole podcast on the Bucs last week. Obviously, the Bogdan Bogdanovic deal didn't go through. You know the deal by now. Sign and trade didn't happen. And an league investigation is opened up. But it's just another example of being so close to getting over the top. Not that Bogdan puts the Bucs for sure in an NBA Finals and wins them a championship. Absolutely not. But he would have helped the starting lineup very, very much so, right? That's a big addition to that starting lineup compared to what you're now going to have. Now, not to say that Dante DiVincenzo isn't going to be a good player and he could end up to be really good, and this trade not working out could really work out for the Bucks and the Brewers actually had one of these that didn't go through with Carlos Gomez involved. That ended up getting like Hader and all these different people that have really helped this team. So that it can only time is going to tell if this trade would have helped a ton or hurt us in the long run. But again, just falling short, right? Just falling short. You got Drew Holiday, couldn't quite get to the next one. There's so many teams in this league that are able to get that next one, right? Able to get that second superstar. And I understand LA is different. And I understand whether it's the Clippers or the Lakers, I understand Houston's different. But they were able to go and get that next. I'm not saying that Bogdanovic is even comparable to Anthony Davis or, it's different. But he would have really, really fit in well with the Milwaukee Bucks. And I think as a team, the Bucks aren't that team that's going to have a couple of superstars necessarily. They're going to have very solid players around one superstar. And they really play as a team. And so I think that Bogdanovic would have been perfect for that. So would it have we would, really added a good starting piece. But again, so close, but couldn't quite get there. And it's unfortunate because Drew Holiday's addition, I think if that would have just came and the Bogdanovic deal was not reported and we just would have focused on Drew Holiday, I think a lot of us would be super happy right now and there wouldn't even be this discussion. But since it was reported, I think, it's just another example of how you get close. Because if that was never reported, you never would have known you got close. But that's what the Wisconsin sports does. They get close, but they don't get there. And by get there, I mean championship. You could be in a Super Bowl, right? But actually, to be honest, we don't, the Wisconsin sports don't lose a lot of, they don't even get to the champ, but they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. They get to the NLCS. They get to the Big Ten Championship game. They get to the NFC Championship game, right? All of which have done so in the last 3 years? 2 years? 3 years? I mean, all of the teams have gotten to a step away from the epitome of what their sport is. Nearly. I mean, right? I guess the Badgers, they get into the playoff. Who knows, right? The Bucks, for sure, almost were to an NBA Finals, lost to Toronto. Brewers, same thing against the Dodgers. And, of course, the Packers last year. But it's close, but not quite good enough. Anyway, Badgers are not a huge example of that. I just kind of roped them in because they played Northwestern this weekend, and they were playing the top team and couldn't quite get it done, right? Hoping for an undefeated season the rest of the way, and that did not happen, which really puts a damper into their Big Ten championship season hopes. But Northwestern's a good defense. They're going to give Ohio State a fight. Now, can Northwestern's offense, keep up? I'm not quite sure, but they're going to give them a good fight if they do play them in the Big Ten championship game. But like I said, that game didn't nearly upset me nearly as much as what happened to the Bucks, and then of course the Green Bay Packers. So, going to chew on the Packers' thoughts and the Bucks' thoughts as well, and enjoy Thanksgiving because. Whether it's, we're doing a Zoom Thanksgiving with some family members, and hopefully you can too, because, obviously it's different than Thanksgiving is usually my favorite holiday of the year. In fact, every year it is because we have great tradition, see a lot of family, and I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. But this year it's obviously different. We're going to be at home just with immediate family and then do some Zooming with extended family. So hopefully you can do that as well. And just let's be smart, because if a lot of people don't be smart, then we're going to get to where we don't want to be in December with all this. So hopefully we can continue to be safe. Hopefully you have a safe holidays, you and yours. And Thanksgiving schedule for the NFL: Houston is at Detroit, Washington is at Dallas, and Baltimore is at Pittsburgh. Those are your 3 games in order of time on Thursday. Packers, they play on Sunday Night Football against the Bears, so that'll be an interesting one. If the Packers lose to an offense like the Bears, I don't care how good the Bears defense is, that is going to be very concerning. So we'll get into that maybe next week with a guest as well. And if you have any suggestions about any guests you want to see on the podcast, feel free to let me know as well in the comments, or you can tweet at me at HunterBOnAir. Go to my Instagram at HunterBOnAir, or like the Facebook page as well, Hunter Baumgardt Sports, and comment there. So anywhere you can just let me know in the comments or what have you if you want to see a specific guest, maybe in Wisconsin sports that I haven't thought of or I haven't reached out to yet. Feel free to do so. I would love to know. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed these podcasts. We are up to episode 40, and it is on Thanksgiving week, which is a fun little celebration. But enjoy Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you next week. And as always, stay positive.